my fellow freedom lovers and sovereign thinkers. Thank you for tuning to the LO3 podcast. My name is Craig, transmitting from the beautiful swampy mangrove South Florida. And today's date is Monday, November 23rd, 2020. Ooh, yes. Just, browsing around, as usual, on what's happening in this world today. Observe responsibly, of course, and watch this one video. Happened somewhere in Canada. Person got 2 citations from an order of speaking at a park, at a protest rally, and a religious gathering. Wow. When the state knows best, it turns to crap. Well, what else is new? But you know what I say? It's just nothing more than a rhetorical deception. Someone ever gives me a form like that, I will wipe my rear end and hand it back to them. Toilet paper. Stop living in fear, folks. Yeah, I was reading an article a couple of days ago. This one place was right across the river, new river called the Wharf. So suddenly made a big stink about it. Oh, the place was packed and they had no one wearing masks. And I want to keep calm and read this. I sent them, the people a link on the National Alliance for National Health, COVID 411. All the information there. How to counter this infection. Remember, folks, it always has an Achilles heel or a flaw. If you trust nature, you feel more confident. It's just everyone make a big stink about it on Facebook. They breaking the rules. Oh my God! These people think Governor DeSantis is all his fault. And the glam renting goes on, right? I just have fun, folks. Don't get me wrong. And respectfully, I'm not saying it doesn't exist. All right? And there's some beautiful people that have passed from this. But you got folks out there want the state to control them. When they say bend over, they go, how far, please? Crawl on the floor. Yes, master. How low want me to crawl on the floor? All these rhetorical house and field peasants. They should all be branded where cowbells around their necks go, moo. I'm part of the herd conformity. Do you find me attractive? Come on, people. It's a lot bigger than what it is. You want to be controlled? You want tyranny? Take your infectious nature out of my state. I know other places will say the same thing. Nothing more than walking antimatter, with all due respect. And I'm not saying this out of malice or vindication, but with love and in good faith. Do your homework before flapping your gums, and don't rely on the idiot box to tell you any different. All you want to do is brainwash you. We'll have you walk around like a bunch of zombies. Good grief. That's nothing more than attributes of Orwellian snowflakes or saps. Am I better than you? Absolutely not. But I've taken the initiative and trying to see things a lot bigger than what it is. Always remain vigilant, my friends. I'm not going to digress this. Well, interesting here. I've been doing. Well, this one here came from the organicprepper.com. And it's an interesting article. It's entitled, 7 Things That Used to Be Crazy Conspiracy Theories Until 2020 Happened. And this is what Lazy Luther have to say about this. Remember back in the old days of, say, 2019, when anyone who talked about microchip implants, Americans being forced to show travel papers, and re-education camps was thought to be crazy conspiracy theorists? And then 2020 rolled around, and voila, it turns out those conspiracy theories weren't so crazy after all. I'm not just talking about the government releasing info about UFOs. Remember, some of it could be Project Bluebeam, so observe responsibly. We're living in a time when someone will attempt to beat the crap out of you, burn your house down, or even kill you if you voted for the wrong presidential candidate. We're being subject to curfews, our movement is restricted, and our business have been forcibly shut down. One day, people will look back on this as a year that everything changed, or depending on how Americans respond to the mandates, the year we finally said enough. Here are 7 things that were considered crazy conspiracy theories until now, when they're becoming far too real. Number 1, universal basic income. Did everyone really think we live in a country where the government would tell private business owners when and how they could operate? Where workers would be told you can no longer go to work for your own good? Well, welcome to 2020. 22 million jobs were lost, and only 42% of those were recovered by last August, and the country began to reopen. Millions of lost jobs were permanent losses as businesses across the country fold under the weight of the restrictions that either don't allow them to operate or the money problems of their former customers. It is clear that the pandemic is doing some fundamental damage to the job market, said Mark Zandi, chief economist for Moody's Analytics. A lot of the jobs lost aren't coming back anytime soon. The idea that the economy is going to snap back to where it was before the pandemic is clearly not going to happen. More than 100 million Americans are currently categorized as temporarily out of work, but historically nearly 30% of people who tell the Labor Department that they are temporarily unemployed never get their job back, said Heidi Sherholz, senior economist at the Economic Policy Institute, a liberal think tank. Even though we don't know if the historical record will hold in this case, it's an extremely valid concern that not all of those people are going to get called back, she said. People who are counting on businesses reopening their doors may be surprised to find that a temporary loss has become a permanent one, said Zandi. One of the businesses that have closed, many will never reopen. Most harshly affected were small businesses. About 60% of businesses that have closed during the coronavirus pandemic will never reopen, and restaurants have suffered the most, according to the new data from Yelp. So, we have not only people who became unemployed, but we also have business owners who've lost everything. As we go into the second round of lockdowns across the United States, it's not a stretch of the imagination to think that some of the small businesses that have thus far managed to stay afloat will succumb to the economic effects of these mandates, taking with them even more jobs and plunging even more people into poverty. Poverty is a vicious cycle, and one seemingly small thing can suck those who are struggling into a vortex of fees and penalties, from which emerging seem impossible. I've written about my own experiences with poverty here. The concern is that even fewer people will recover financially after the rounds of government mandates, leaving even more Americans broke, hungry, and homeless. But don't worry, the government is here to help, And I mean that in the President Reagan threat, in the President Reagan threatening the kind of way. They provide a stimulus check to everyone in America, gave such huge unemployment money to people that they made more staying home than they did going to work, and went so much deeper into debt that the number is simply unfathomable. In effect, they pay people not to work, and it's the fault of those people. In most cases, the government forces their places of employment to close unless it was considered essential. All hail to neo-mercantilism. Hip, hip, hooray. And that sounds a whole lot like universal basic income, or as I like to call it, modern feudalism. Quite a few people are ready to give up their freedom so that someone else can take care of them. They don't think they're giving up freedom. They're convinced that they are embracing a smart, fair system that eliminates poverty. The greed entitlement is lack of ambition that seems inherent in many people today, will have them slipping on the yoke of servitude willingly. They feel like they deserve a living for just drawing breath. As Gawker's headline reads, universal basic income is the utopia we deserve. The idea of universal basic income for all citizens has been catching on all over the world. It is too crazy to believe in. We spoke to the author of a new book on the ins and outs and utopian dreams of making basic income a reality. The basic income movement got a significant boost this week when the charity Give Directly announced that it will be pursuing a 10-year, $30 million plot project, giving a select group of Kenyan villagers a basic income and studying its effects as an anti-poverty solution. Universal basic income appeals to impoverished people in Africa relatively well off. Scandinavians and Americans automated out of their jobs alike. Sure, money for nothing sounds great on the surface, but what would the real result of basic income be? Universal basic income be? Feudalism, serfdom, enslavement. UBI would fast track us back to the feudalism of the Middle Ages. Sure, we'd be living in slick, modern micro-efficiencies instead of shacks. We have come kind of modern job instead of raising sheep for the Lord of the Manot. Yeah. But in the end, we wouldn't actually own anything because private property would be abolished for all but the ruling class. We no longer have the ability to get ahead in life. Of course, our courses would be set for us, and veering off of those courses would be harshly discouraged. People will be completely dependent on the government and ruling class for every necessity: food, shelter, water, clothing. What better way to assert control than to make compliance necessary for survival? With this second round of lockdowns, how many more jobs will go permanently down the tubes? What are all those people going to do for food, for rent? The government is going to give them money. And we can't even argue, really, because everyone knows someone who has lost a job they had for decades and who can't find other work. They might call it something else, but universal basic income is coming, and it's coming soon. 2, travel papers. Don't be ridiculous. We never have to show our papers to travel freely in the United States. Duh. until a COVID-19 pandemic with all the subsidiary restrictions occurred. Back in March, days after I warned about the first lockdown, I wrote, "For everyone who thought the article about the lockdown of America was a hysterical overstatement, and that they could still do whatever they wanted, because it wasn't really being enforced, What are you thinking now that travel papers are being handed out? To me, this sounds like the lockdowns I wrote of yesterday were just the first incremental step toward a society that nobody hopes to see. Yesterday, readers sent me photos of travel papers provided to them by employers so they could get to and from work. These are employees who work in the industries like healthcare, pharmacies, and food service, as well as those who work in the production, transport, and sales of essential supplies. And I know for a fact, I have a sister-in-law that showed me her papers with from CVS. So, just give you an example. One reader wrote, "We were told to show that if we got stopped on the way to or from work, and that if the authorities gave us any trouble, not to argue and just go back home." Papers that people sent were from Pennsylvania, New York, Arizona, Michigan, North Carolina, Kansas, New Jersey, West Virginia, Oregon, Florida, Louisiana, and Ohio. Industries are mentioned in the papers were trucking, grocery stores, medical clinics, hospitals, nursing homes, city transit workers, railroads, food production plants, pharmacies, gas stations, stores like Target and Walmart, and automotive repair facilities. Most people were given their papers on Friday or Saturday until they need them to get to and from work starting the week ahead. You can see some of papers that people sent me here. So that's a link for that, folks. Do it. Number 3, mandatory GPS trackings of humans. Don't be silly. Nobody's actually tracking you with your phone. You're not Jason Bourne. Whoops, 2020 proved that was a lie when they rolled out contact tracing apps to make sure you didn't breathe the same air as somebody who got a positive COVID test. Well, I heard too, COVID-19 means certification of verification identification, AI. Okay, 19, the first letter of the alphabet A, and the 9th is I. Okay, so artificial intelligence. Not only do sick or potentially sick people need to worry about being phoned or questioned by contact tracers, but there's a whole new world of dystopian technology being rapidly developed. Apple and Google formed a partnership to develop a phone app with the potential monitor 1/3 of the world's population. The Australian government has developed an app called COVID Safe to protect you and your family and friends and save the lives of other Australians. The more Australians connected to COVID Safe app, the quicker we can find the virus. I can dream about it. The state will make me feel safe. In fact, all sorts of potentially invasive new technology tools are springing up to fight COVID. Some use AI to detect signs of COVID, and the Department of Defense is deploying thermal imaging to detect signs of COVID. These things won't just go away when the pandemic is over. If they're in use for a year or 2 years, however, long this virus is with us, chances are they're here to stay. So, if you have a smartphone, rest assured at some point you're probably going to have an app like this forcibly installed during one of those relentless updates. Of course, they'll say that the app is just a framework, and you have to enable it to work. Oh, wait, they already said that after installing the framework. 4. Cashless societies. Somehow the United States ran out of change. There were no coins to be had anywhere for a while, Bloomberg reported in August, as if a deep recession and a never-ending pandemic wasn't enough. The U.S. now faces another crisis, a coin shortage. Thanks to the lockdowns, fewer coins are in circulation, leaving businesses unable to make change with customers banned over paper money. They had a lot of people concerned, especially since Venezuela used COVID to push citizens toward a cashless society. Here in the United States, the change shortage was so extensive it caused many stores to give your change on a store loyalty card or invite you to donate that change to some cause. A true cashless society would allow significant control over our day-to-day lives. See this article for some of the totalitarian ways it would affect us. And I've seen it myself, my friends. Daisy's not lying. 5. Microchips. DARPA got involved early on, touting it is as a way to save us all from COVID, Robert Reiller wrote. But governments aren't having to market the chip as a method to track, trace, and control their populations. Instead, they are marketing the chip as a way to track and detect COVID and other coronaviruses. Clearly, this is a much easier sell to a public literally terrorized by their governments and mainstream media outlets for the last 6 months. Raul Diego details the creation and coming rollout of the new biochip in his article, A DARPA-Funded Implantable Microchip to Detect COVID-19 Could Hit Markets by 2021, where he writes, the most significant scientific discovery since gravity has been hiding in plain sight for nearly a decade, and its destructive potential to humanity is so enormous that the biggest war machine on the planet immediately deployed its vast resources to possess and control it. Financing its research and development through agencies like the National Institute of Health, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, DARPA, and HHS BARDA. The revolutionary breakthrough came to a Canadian scientist named Derek Rossi in 2010 purely by accident. The now retired Harvard professor claimed in an interview with the National Post that he found a way to reprogram the molecules that carry the genetic instructions for cell development in the human body, not to mention all biological life forms. The molecules are called messenger ribonucleic acid, or mRNA, and the newfound ability to rewrite those instructions to produce any kind of cell within a biological organism has radically changed the course of Western medicine and science. Even if no one has really noticed yet, as Rossi himself puts it, the real important discovery here was you could now use mRNA, and if you got it into the cells, then you could get the mRNA to express any protein in the cells. This was the big thing. The microchip talk died down, but the fact, it is even a discussion and topic of COVID research, should be troubling. Anyway, after the initial microchip hubbub, the push got redirected toward our next conspiracy theory. 6. Mandatory vaccines. Remember back when nobody thought that adults would ever be forced to take vaccines except for crazy conspiracy theorists? Well, that day is coming sooner than many people expect. A much heralded COVID vaccine could be rolled out in a matter of days. Pfizer and BioNTech have both concluded phase 3 of rushing their jabs to market. There are still many, many questions. The return of too many of the old familiar ways will take time, and how much time remains unclear. The answers await more research into the vaccines, how they can be distributed, and how many people are willing to get them. A vaccine won't be available immediately for everybody, says Arthur Reingold, a professor of epidemiology at the School of Public Health at the University of California, Berkeley. It probably will take 4 to 6 months, he says. What that says to me is that people will have to keep wearing masks at least until spring. We won't be in a magically different situation by February or March. I don't see how that can possibly happen. Equally unimportant are the unknowns about the vaccines themselves. Scientists still don't know how long vaccine-induced protection will last. For example, or whether inoculations can block actual infection or only prevent the onset of disease. If the latter turns out to be the case, meaning the vaccines keep us from getting sick but not infected, we could still be infectious to others. Until we know, don't toss those masks into the trash. Arthur Bradley, an immunovirologist who chairs Mayo's Clinic COVID-19 Task Force, says the return of any normal activities depends on numerous factors, including how many people get vaccinated. Come on, peasants! Roll up your sleeves and take the shot, right? The impossibility that life will return to normal by summer is the majority of the population receives the vaccines. By then, and the early efficacy data is borne out in ongoing studies, he says. He adds, however, I think it is unlikely we will be able to vaccine the majority of the population. And how will they make sure that the majority of the population gets the vaccines? It'll start out easy. There are tons of people who will gladly roll up their sleeves to get the vaccination that was rushed to the market with no testing on the long-term effects. And then the rest of us will be coerced by being unable to go to work, to a concert, to school, or into a public building without proof we've been vaccinated. You walk toward the arena, ready for the big game, tickets in hand, but what you see is a long line of wrapping around the corner of buildings and a bottleneck at the entrance as people search their pockets and purses for a small piece of paper. To be cleared to enter, you will also need that document proof that you've received a COVID-19 vaccination. This is a future, as some experts see it, a world in which you'll need to show you've been inoculated against the novel coronavirus, attend a sport game, get a manicure, go to work, or hop on a train. We're not going to get to the point where the vaccine police break down your door to vaccinate you, says Arthur Kaplan, a bioethicist at the New York University School of Medicine. But he and several other health policy experts envision vaccine mandates could be instituted and enforced by local governments or employers, similar to the current vaccine requirements for school-age children, military personnel, and hospital workers. The mandates can be directed toward customers as well, just as business owners can bar shoeless and shirtless clients from entering their restaurants, salons, arenas, and stores. They can legally keep people out of for any number of reasons, as long as they're not running afoul of any discrimination laws, says Dorit Rubenstein-Reist, a professor of health and vaccine law at the University of California, Hastings College of the Law. When COVID-19 vaccine becomes available, some experts think states will require targeted industries to enforce vaccine mandates for their employees, especially those we've come to know as essential workers. Grocery store workers get exposed to a lot of people, but also have a chance to infect a lot of people because of the nature of their work and the fact that virtually everybody needs to buy food, says Carmel Schachter, a executive director of the Petrie Flom Center for the Health, Law, Policy, Biotechnology, and Bioethics at University Law School Hospitality Industry Workers. Those who work in restaurants, bars, and coffee shops, for example, could also see similar mandates. It is an employer's interest to make sure that their workplace is protected and that you can't infect your colleagues, Schachter says. Having a widely accessible vaccine gets a lot of employers of having to control their clients' behavior. And with the vaccinated workforce, you don't need to worry if the people you're serving at the restaurant have COVID-19. Even the general public could be incentivized to get vaccinated. Oddly enough, the best way to impose a mandate is to reward people with more freedom if they follow the mandate. Kaplan said, for an example, with proof of inoculation, would you be able to attend a sporting event as a reward for doing the right thing, he says. I can't imagine people saying, if you want to go to my restaurant, my bowling alley, or my tattoo parlor, then I want to see a vaccine certificate too. Booster shots could also be required depending on the efficacy of future vaccines. Doesn't it just make you feel all warm and fuzzy inside how these experts are planning to force an unwilling populace to accept an untested vaccine? It's all for your own good, you know. 7. Re-education camps. Sorry about that. Remember how we all used to joke about being put into FEMA camps? Well, finally, for those of us who believe these conspiracy theories were conspiracy facts all along. Oh, and for Trump voters, there's a discussion about how to re-educate us if we can't rejoin society. In a Twitter thread run amok, we saw the dark side of some well-educated Democrats who were sincerely trying to figure out how to redeem those of us who did not vote for Joe Biden. Of course, he doesn't really mean re-education camps. Of course not. And Laura found she bit off a bit more than she intended to chew. So, of course, she blamed non-Americans. Probably those darned Russians, right? Welcome to my inbox for the past 8 years, Laura. Every time I have posted a pro-gun, pro-self-defense article, I have been barraged with creative rape threats with a vast variety of implements and violent threats by the peaceful left. People have wished my children dead in a school shooting. So cry me a river. Laura, if you are thoughtful discussion of putting me and people like me into an anti-culty programming in a gulag put you in an unpleasant position. Trust me, you'll get used to it. Heck, you might even begin to understand why I'm a gun owner. What other conspiracy theories have been proven this year? It is just me, or has 2020 been like reading every crazy conspiracy rabbit hole on the internet while dropping acid? Except you can't come down from the trip because it's all actually happening. As the insanity continues, make sure you have this book to help you get prepared. There's a link for that. You can look it up for yourself. What other former wacky theories have become fact this year? Share your thoughts. Well, everything's being stripped naked, my friends. It is insanity. 2020. Such a, you could say, a geopolitical edition of Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. Remember all the people thought we were crazy about those electric ballot boxes can compromise votes? Well, look what happened. It's all being talked about. Oh, yeah. It goes on and on and on. The road to technocracy, folks. And even a person like myself is preparing the best he can. And a lot of these shops, stores, and businesses are going to be suffering the most. Because I know one thing, if they're going to do these inoculations, like vaccine programs, mandates, to get that job, and people don't work, they're going to bring in the robots that do the job for us. Think outside the box, folks. Learn to be self-efficient and congregate with like-minded individuals. We all got great skills, and we have our flaws, but we can still work together to improve one another. I'm doing it, and I'm enjoying every minute of it, not taking life for granted or anything else. But one of the areas we always got to be aware of, folks, when it comes to technocracy, they're going to get all of us, including our enemies. Everyone needs to pay attention. And it looks like they are, based on what I've seen so far. And I got to admit, this thing I'm not crazy about, but I'm enjoying every minute of it. And fight for what's right. If President Trump has the balls to challenge the elections, you should have the encouragement, be encouraged to do the same when it comes to your property rights, your liberties, or natural rights. The state doesn't own you at all. Period. They assume that. The ones who say yes they do are nothing more than Uncle Toms and Angel Mamas, and they are not your friends. The truth hurts, and deep down inside you know I'm right. Always remain vigilant. And friends don't let friends support the her conformity. And that will be it. I thank everyone for listening. Plus, feel free to download and share. Works. If you have any questions, comments, if you said something interesting you want to check out, whatever you do, please send your correspondence with decorum. Furthermore, I will leave a footnote on my Spreaker page. And if you want to contact me, you can hit me at LokiLuck3@gmail.com or LokiLuck03@protonmail.com. Please and support Daisy Luther, her website, Organic Prepper. If you want to send me some love or contributions, hit me at paypal.me/LokiLuck3. Once again, thank you for your time. Plus, always remember that demoniac resistance is healthy for the soul and can liberate humanity. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Keep on spreading love, and may your guardian spirits be with you.